Chapter 9 The Ferryman. By this river I want to stay, thought Siddharth. It is the same which I have crossed a long time ago on my way to childlike people. A friendly ferryman had guided me then. He is the one I want to go to. Starting out with his hut, my path had led me at the time into a new life, which had now grown old and is dead. My present path, my present new life shall also take its start there. Tenderly, he looked into the rushing water, into the transparent green, into the crystalline of its drawing, so rich in secrets. Bright pearl he saw rising from the deep, quiet bubbles of airs floating on the reflect surface. The blue of the sky being depicted in it with 1,000 ears. The river looked at him with green ones, with white ones, with crystal ones, with blue sky. How did he love this water? How did it delighted him? How grateful was he to him? In his heart, he heard the voice talking, which was newly awakened. And it told him, love this water, stay near it, learn from it. Oh yes, he wanted to learn from it. He wanted to listen to it. He who would understand this water and its secret, so it seemed to him, would also understand many other things, many secrets, all secrets. But out of all secrets of the river, he today only saw one. This one touched his soul. He saw the water ran and ran incessantly. It ran. It was nevertheless always there, was always at all times the same, and yet new in every moment. Great be he who would grasp this, understand this. He understood and grasped it not, only felt some idea of it, stirring a distant memory, divine voices. Siddharth rose and works for hunger in his body became unbearable. In a daze he walked on up the path by the bank, up river, listened to the current and listened to the rumbling hunger in his body. When he reached the ferry, the boat was just ready. And the same ferryman who had once transported the young salmon across the river stood in the boat. Siddharth recognized him. He had also aged very much. Would you like to ferry me over? He asked. The ferryman, being astonished to see such an elegant man walking alone on foot, took him into his boat and pushed it off the bank. It's beautiful life you have chosen for yourself, the passenger spoke. It must be beautiful to live by this water every day, to cruise in it. With a smile, the man and the oar moved from side to side. It is beautiful, sir. It is as you say, but isn't every life, isn't every work beautiful? This may be true, but I envy you for yours. You would soon stop enjoying it. This is nothing for people wearing fine clothes. Siddharth laughed. Once before, I have been looked upon today because of my clothes. I have been looked upon with distrust. Wouldn't you ferrymen like to accept these clothes which are nuisance to me for me? For you must know I have no money to pay your fare. You are joking, sir. Ferryman laughed. I am not joking, friend. Behold, once before you have ferried me across this river in your boat, and for the immaterial reward for a good deed, thus do it today as well, and accept my clothes for it. And do you, sir, intend to continue traveling without clothes? Most of all, I don't want to continue traveling at all. Most of all, I would like you, ferryman, to give me an old loincloth and keep me with you as your assistant, as rather as you train me. For all I have learned first how to handle a boat. For a long time, the ferryman looked at the stranger searching. Now I recognize you, he finally said. At one time you have slept in my hut. This was a long time ago, possibly more than 20 years ago. You have been ferried across the river by me. We parted like good friends. Haven't you been a salmon? I can't think of your name anymore. My name is Siddharth, and I was a salmon when you have last seen me. So be welcome, Siddharth. My name is Vasudev. You will, so I hope, be my guest today as well as the sleep in my hut and tell me where you are coming from and why these beautiful clothes are such a nuisance to you. They had reached the middle of the river, and Vasudev pushed the oar with more strength in order to overcome the current. He worked calmly, his eyes fixed in on the front of the boat. With a brawny arms, Siddharth sat and watched him. Remembered how once before, on that last day of the time as a salmon, love from this man had stirred in his heart. Gratefully, he accepted Vasudev's invitation when they had reached the bank. He helped him to tie the boat to the stakes. After this, the ferryman asked him to enter the hut. Offered him bread and water. Siddharth ate with eager pleasure and also ate with eager pleasure of mango fruits Vasudev offered him. Afterwards, it was almost the time of the sunset. They sat on a log by the bank. The Siddharth told him, the ferryman, about where he originally came from and about his life, and as he had seen it before his eyes today, that in the hour of despair until late night lasted his tale. Vasudev listened with great attention. Listening it carefully, he let everything enter in his mind. Birthplace and childhood, and all that learning, all that searching, all joy, all distress. This was among the ferryman's virtues one of the greatest. Like only a few, he knew how to listen. Without him having spoken a word, the speaker sensed how Vasudev let his word enter in his mind. Quiet, open, waiting. How he did not lose a single one, awaited not a single one with impatience, did not add his praise or rebuke, was just listening. Siddharth felt what a happy fortune it is to confess to such a listener, to bury in his heart his own life, his own search, his own suffering. But in the end, Siddharth's tale, when he spoke of the tree by the river and of his deep fall of the holy Om, and how he had felt such a love for the river after his slumber, the ferryman listened with twice the attention, entirely and completely absorbed by it, with his closed eyes. But when Siddharth fell silent, and a long silence had occurred, then Vasudev said, "It is as I thought. The river has spoken to you. It is your friend as well. It speaks to you as well." "That is good. That is very good. Stay with me, Siddharth, my friend. I used to have a wife. Her bed was next to mine, but she has died a long time ago. For a long time I have lived alone. Now you shall live with me. There is space and food for both." "I thank you," said Siddharth. "I thank you and accept, and I also thank you for this, Vasudev, for listening to me so well. These people are rare who know how to listen, and I did not meet a single one who knew it as well as you did. I will also learn in this respect from you." "You will learn it," spoke Vasudev, "but not from me. The river has taught me to listen. From it you will learn it as well. It knows everything. The river, everything can be learned from it. See, you have already learned this from water too, that it is good to strive downwards, to sink, to seek depth. The rich and elegant Siddharth is becoming an oarsman's servant, and learned Brahman Siddharth becomes a ferryman. This has also been told to you by the river. You will learn that other things from it as well." Siddharth replied after a long pause, "What other things, Vasudev?" Vasudev rose. "It's late," he said. "Let's go to sleep. It's already late, and I can't tell you that other thing, oh my friend. You'll learn it." Or perhaps you know it already. See, I'm no learned man. I have no special skills in speaking. I also have no special skills in thinking. All I'm able to do is to listen. To be godly, I have learned nothing else. If I was able to say and teach it, I might be a wise man. But like this, I'm only a ferryman, and it is my task to ferry people across the river. I have transported many, thousands, and to all of them, my river has been nothing but an obstacle on their travels. They travel to seek money, business, weddings, pilgrimages. River was obstructing their path, and the ferryman's job was to get them quickly across that obstacle. But for some among thousands, a few, 4 or 5, the river has stopped being an obstacle. They have heard its voice, they have listened to it, and river has become sacred to them, as it has become sacred to me. Let's rest now, Siddharth. Siddharth stayed with the ferryman and learned to operate the boat, and when there was nothing to do at the ferry, he worked with Vasudev in the rice field, gathered food, plucked the fruit off the banana trees. He learned to build an oar and learned to mend the boat and to weave baskets, and was joyful because of everything he learned, and the days, the months passed quickly. But more than Vasudev could teach him, he was taught by the river. Incessantly, he learned from it. Most of all, he learned from it to listen, to pay close attention with a quiet heart, with a waiting, open soul, without passion, without a wish, without judgment, without an opinion. In a friendly manner, he lived by side with Vasudev, and occasionally they exchanged some words. Few at the length thought about words. Vasudev was no friend of words. Rarely Siddharth succeeded in persuading him to speak. Did you? So he asked him at one time. Did you too learn that secret from river, that there is no time? Vasudev's face was filled with a bright smile. Yes, Siddharth, he spoke. It is this what you mean, isn't it? That the river is everywhere at once, at the source and at the mouth, at the waterfall, at the ferry, at the rapids, in the sea, in the mountains, everywhere at once. That there is only the present time for it. Not the shadow of past, not the shadow of future. That it is, said Siddharth. And when I had learned it, I looked at my life, and it was also a river. And the boy Siddharth was only separated from the man Siddharth, and from the old man Siddharth by a shadow, not by something real. Also, Siddharth's previous words were no past and his death, and his return to Brahma was no future. Nothing was, nothing will be, everything is everything, has existence and is present. Siddharth spoke with ecstasy deeply, and enlightenment had delighted him. Oh, was not all suffering, all time, were not all the forms of tormenting oneself and being afraid time, was not everything hard, everything hostile in this world, gone and overcome as soon as one had overcome time, as soon as time would have been put out of existence by one's thought. In ecstatic delight, he had spoken. But Vasudev smiled at him brightly and nodded in confirmation. Silently he nodded, brushed his hand over Siddharth's shoulders, turned back to his work. And once again, when the river had just increased its flow in the rainy season and made powerful noise, then said Siddharth, "Isn't it so, oh friend, the river has many voices, very many voices. Hasn't it the voice of a king, and of a warrior, and of a bull, and of a bird at the night, and of a woman giving birth, and sign, man, and 1,000 other voices more?" "So it is," said Vasudev, nodded. "All voices of the creatures are in its one voice." "And do you know," Siddharth continued, "what word it speaks when you succeed in hearing all of its 10,000 voices at once?" Happily, Vasudev's face was smiling. He bent over to Siddharth and spoke the holy Om near his ear. And this had been the very thing which Siddharth had been also hearing. And time after time, his smile became more similar to Ferryman's, because almost just as bright, almost just as thoroughly glowing with bliss, just as shining out of thousand small wrinkles, just as alike to a child's, just as alike to an old man. Many travelers, seeing the two ferrymen, thought they are brothers. Often they sat in the evening together by the bank on the log, said nothing, both listened to the water, which was no water to them, but the voice of life, the voice of what exists, of what is eternally taking shape. And it happened from the time to time that both, when listening to the river, thought of the same things, of a conversation from the day before yesterday, of one day travels, the face and the fate of whom they occupied their thoughts, of death, of their childhood, and that they both, in the same moment when the river had been saying something good to them, looked at each other, both thinking precisely the same thing, both delighted about the same answer to the same question. There was something about this ferry and the two ferrymen which was transmitted to others, which many of the travelers felt. It happened occasionally that a traveler, after looking at the face of one of the ferrymen, started to tell the story about his life, told about pains, confessed evil things, asked for comfort and advice. It happened occasionally that someone asked for permission to stay for a night with them to listen to the river. It happened that curious people came who had already told that there being two wise men or two sorcerers or holy men living by that ferry. The curious people asked many questions, but they got no answers, and they found neither nor wise men. They only found two friendly old little men who seemed to be mute and to have become a bit strange and the gaga. And the curious people laughed and were discussing how foolishly and gullibly the common people were spreading such empty rumors. The year passed by. Nobody counted them. Then at one time monks came by a pilgrimage, followers of Gautam the Buddha, who were asking to be ferried across the river, and by them the ferrymen were told that they were the most hurriedly walking back to their great teacher. For the news had spread the exalted one was deadly sick and he would die soon. His last human death, in order to become one with the salvation. It was not long until a new flock of monks came along on their pilgrimage, and another one, and the monks as well as the most of the other travelers and peoples walking through. The land spoke of nothing else than Gautam and his impending death. And as people are flocking from everywhere, from all sides, when they are going to war or to do coronation of a king, and are gathering like ants in droves, thus they flocked, like being drawn on by a magic spell, to where the great Buddha was awaiting his death, where the huge event was to take place, and the perfected one of an era was to become one with the glory. Often Siddhartha thought in those days of the dying wise man, the great teacher, whose voice had admonished nations and had awoken hundreds of thousands, whose voice he had also once heard, whose holy face he had also once seen with respect. Kindly he thought of him, saw his path to perfection before his eyes, and remembered with a smile those words which he had once as a young man said to him, the exalted ones. They had been, so it seemed to him, proud and precious words. With a smile, he remembered them. For a long time, he knew that there was nothing standing between Gautam and him anymore. Though he was still unable to accept his teachings, no, there was no teachings. A truly searching person, someone who truly want to find, could accept. But he who had found, he could approve of any teachings, every path, every goal. There was nothing standing between him and the all other thousands any more who lived in that. What is eternal, who breathed, what is divine on one of these days. When so many went on pilgrimage to dying Buddha, Kamla also went to him, who used to be the most beautiful of the quotations. A long time ago, she had retired from her previous life. She had given her garden to the monks of Gotham as a gift and had taken her refuge in the teachings, was among the friends of the benefactors of the pilgrimage. Together with Siddharth, the boy, her son, she had gone on her way. Due to the news of the near death of Gotham, in simple clothes on foot with her little son, she was traveling by the river. But the boy had soon grown tired, desired to go home back, desired to rest, desired to eat, became disobedient and started whinnying. Kamla often had to take a rest with him. He was accustomed to having his way against her. She had to feed him, had to comfort him, had to scold him. He did not comprehend why he had to go on this exhausting and sad pilgrimage with his mother to an unknown place, to a stranger who was holy and about to die. So what if he died? How did this concern the boy? The pilgrimage were getting close to Vasudev's ferry. When the little Siddharth once again forced his mother to rest, she, Kamla herself, had also become tired, and while the boy was chewing a banana, she crouched down on the ground, closed her eyes a bit, and rested. But suddenly she uttered a wailing scream. The boy looked at her in fear and saw her face having grown pale from horror. From under her dress, a small black snake fled, by which Kamla had been bitten. Hurriedly, they now both ran along the path in order to reach people and got near the ferry. There Kamla collapsed, was not able to go any further, but the boy started crying miserably, only interrupting it to kiss and hug her mother. She also joined his loud screams to help, until the sound reached Vasudev's ear, who stood at the ferry, quickly came walking, took the woman on his arms, carried her into boat. The boy ran along, and soon they all reached the hut, where Siddharth stood by the stove and was just lighting the fire. He took up and first saw the boy's face, which wondrously reminded him of something like a warning to remember something he had forgotten. Then he saw Kamla, whom he instantly recognized, though she lay unconscious in Ferryman's arm, and now he knew that it was his own son, whose face had been such a warning reminder to him, and heart stirred in her chest. Kamla's wound was washing, but had already turned black and her body was swollen. She was made to drink a healing potion. Her consciousness returned. She lay on Siddharth's bed in the hut and bent over her stood Siddharth, who used to love her so much. It seemed like a dream to her. With a smile, she looked at her friend's face. Just slowly, she realized her situation, remembered the bite, called timidly for a boy. "He is with you, don't worry," said Siddharth. Kamla looked into his eyes, spoke with a heavy tongue, paralyzed by poison. "You have become old, my dear," she said. "You have become grey. But you are like the young salmon who at one time came without clothes with dusty feet to me in the garden. You are much more like him. Then you were like him at the time when you had left me and Kamaswami. In the eyes, you are like him, Siddharth, as I have grown old. You could still recognize me?" Siddharth smiled instantly. I recognize you, Kamla, my dear. Kamla pointed to her boy and said, Did you recognize him as well? He's your son. Her eyes became confused and fell shut. The boy wept. Siddharth took him on his knees. He let him weep, petted his ear, and at the sight of the child's face, a Brahman prayer came to his mind, which he learned a long time ago when he had been a little boy himself. Slowly, with the singing voice, he started to speak from his past childhood. The words came flowing to him. With singing, the boy became calm, was only now and then uttering a sob and fell asleep. Siddharth placed him on Vasudev's bed. Vasudev stood by stove and cooked rice. Siddharth gave him a look, which he returned with a smile. She'll die, Siddharth said quickly. Vasudev nodded. Over his friendly face ran the light of the stove's fire. Once again, Kamla returned to consciousness. Pain distorted her face. Siddharth's eyes read the suffering on her mouth, on her pale cheeks. Quietly, he read it. Attentively waiting, his mind becoming one with her suffering, Kamla felt it. Her gaze sought his eyes. Looking at him, she said, Now I see that your eyes have changed as well. They have become completely different. By what? Do I still recognize that you are Siddharth? It is you and it's not you. Siddharth said nothing. Quietly, his eyes looked at her. You have achieved it? She asked. You have found peace? He smiled and placed his hand on hers. I am seeing it, she said. I am seeing it. I too will find peace. You have found it, Siddharth spoke in a whisper. Kamla never stopped looking into his eyes. She thought about her pilgrimage to Gautam, which wanted to take in order to see the face of the perfected one, to breathe his peace. She thought that she had now found him in his place, and that was good just as if she had seen the another one. She wanted to tell this to him, but the tongue no longer obeyed her will. Without speaking, she looked at him. He saw the life fading from her eyes. When the final pain filled her eyes, made them grow dim, when the final shiver ran through her limbs, his finger closed her eyelid. For a long time, he sat and looked at her peacefully, dead face for a long time. He observed her mouth, her old tired mouth with those lips which had become thin, and he remembered that he used to, in the spring of his years, compare his mouth with freshly cracked fig. For a long time he sat, red in the pale face. In tired wrinkles, filled himself with the sight, saw his own face lying in same manner, just as white, just as quenched out, and saw at the time his face and hers about young, with red lips, with fiery eyes, and the feeling of this both being present at the same time real, the feeling of eternity completely filled with the aspect of his being. Deeply he felt, more deeply than ever before, in this hour, indestructibility of every life, the eternity of every moment. When he rose, Vasudev has prepared rice for him, but Siddharth did not eat. In the stable where the goat stood, and two old men prepared beds for straw for themselves, and Vasudev lay himself down to sleep, but Siddharth went outside and sat this night before the hut, listening to the river, surrounded by the past, touched and encircled by all times of his life at the same time. But occasionally he rose, stepped to the door of a hut, and listened to whether the boy was sleeping. Early in the morning, even before the sun could be seen, Vasudev came out of the stable and walked over to his friend. You haven't slept, he said. No, Vasudev, I sat here. I was listening to river. A lot it has told me. Deeply, it has filled me with the healing. Thought with thought of oneness. You have experienced suffering, Siddharth, but I see No sadness has entered in your heart. No, my dear, how should I be sad? I, who have been rich and happy, have become even richer and happier now. My son has been given to me. Your son shall be welcome to me as well. But now, Siddharth, let's go to work. There is much to be done. Kamla has died on the same bed on which my wife has died a long time ago. Let's us build Kamla's fine funeral pile on the same hill on which I had then built my wife's funeral pile. While the boy was still asleep, they built the funeral pile. And by the Kamla's death, the chapter ends. It's the chapter which ends with a sad note, and go for the another listenings, as I have been saying this from a long time and I felt sad for this what happened to him. Actually, what he felt, it was a little touchy and I'm confused here. Thank you so much.